He is aggressive.
Already a 3-second lead for Dowd. Carmichael gets by the block.
For over 2 decades, if you wanted to become a motocross champion, there was one clear path to follow. You got noticed by Mitch Payton, you signed with Monster Energy Pro Circuit Kawasaki, you piloted their legendary Team Green bikes, and you won championships. It was that simple. The team didn't just produce champions, they mass-produced them. Jeremy McGrath, Ricky Carmichael, Ryan Villopoto. These weren't outliers. This was the pipeline. This was the promise. But somewhere over the last 10 to 12 years, something shifted. The same team that once dominated the 250 class with an iron grip started getting knocked out when it mattered most. Not all at once, not obviously, but consistently enough that writers and fans started calling it the curse of Pro Circuit. To understand how Pro Circuit fell, you have to understand what they built in the first place. Mitch Payton founded the team in 1991 with a single, obsessive philosophy. Winning wasn't a goal, it was a requirement. His reputation came from one thing: engine tuning. While other teams were adjusting jets and hoping for the best, Payton was inside the engine building speed. His Kawasaki's ran like nothing else on the starting line. They screamed at the top of the power band with a clarity and aggression that made the competition feel like they were on borrowed time.
Got Michael Alessi right there. Hill looks like Andrew.
And a rider with that kind of talent, one of those engines, they didn't just win. They pulled gaps so wide, the rest of the gate looked like they were riding in a different sport. Pro Circuit captured 12 championships in their first decade alone. The team built a reputation so powerful that being selected to ride for them felt like you'd already won half the battle. When Ricky Carmichael signed with Pro Circuit, it wasn't a question of if he'd win, just how many times. By 2015, the statistics told a story of absolute dominance. Between 2006 and 2015, Kawasaki, powered entirely by Pro Circuit, won 11 of 30 available 250 class championships. 40% of every title across both Supercross and Pro Motocross was going to riders wearing Team Green. The team had built something that looked unshakable. Then, the numbers inverted. But to understand why, you have to look at 2 things that happened simultaneously, and neither of them started with Pro Circuit making mistakes. From 2016 through 2025, Kawasaki's share of championships crashed down to 6%. 2 championships in 10 years. 2. Meanwhile, Monster Energy Star Racing Yamaha, once a scrappy privateer operation, captured 45% of the same championships. 15 titles in the same time frame. Pro Circuit's last Supercross championship came in 2017 with Justin Hill in the 250 West. Their last Pro Motocross championship was in 2019 with Adam Cianciarulo. Since then, nothing. Individual race wins? Sure, they picked up their 300th career victory in 2024 with Ty Masterpool, but victories don't equal championships anymore. The team kept winning battles, they just started losing wars. The first thing people miss when they look at Pro Circuit's decline is that the entire sport transformed around them. The 250 class in the early 2000s was a stepping stone. Promising kids would come through for 2 or 3 years, collect some wins, grab a championship maybe, then graduate to the 450 class where the real money and prestige lived. The field wasn't deep because the top talent didn't stick around. A generational talent on a Pro Circuit engine could separate from the rest of the pack because there literally wasn't a lot of pack to worry about. But that world is gone. The modern 250 class is where riders stay. It's lucrative. Factories invest serious money. The gate at every Supercross is loaded with riders who are legitimately talented on legitimately competitive bikes. Guys are separated by hundredths of a second, not whole seconds anymore. That compression changed everything about how you have to race. Get a bad start in 2005? No problem. That superior engine lets you slice through traffic, salvage a solid points finish, live to fight another round. The margin for error was wide enough to absorb a bad night. Get a bad start now, and you're not slicing through amateurs. You're fighting for every single position against other factory-level athletes on other factory-level machines. To move forward, you have to override the motorcycle, ride at the absolute limit of physics and human anatomy for nearly 20 minutes straight. Miss a rhythm section by an inch, catch a rut wrong, blow a line by 6 inches. The consequence isn't 4th place. It's broken bones, torn ligaments, and a hospital bed. The 250 class didn't just get faster, it became a meat grinder. And the grinder doesn't discriminate. Meanwhile, something was happening on the engineering side that tipped the scales in a direction Pro Circuit couldn't immediately follow. For years, the Kawasaki KX250 was built around high RPM top-end delivery. To get the most out of it, you had to carry momentum, keep the bike screaming in the upper registers, manage every corner with precision. It was a thoroughbred machine. Fast if you were smooth, punishing if you weren't. Then Yamaha changed the blueprint. In 2014, they introduced a new YZ250F with a reverse cylinder head and an engine tilted back in the chassis. The result was bottom-end torque that had nothing to do with Kawasaki's philosophy. Where the Kawasaki required perfection out of tight corners, the Yamaha exploded forward instantly. Make a corner mistake on the Yamaha, and the engine recovered you. Make that same mistake on the Kawasaki, and you were already riding harder, already taking more risk. For Supercross, where corners are tight, rutted, and unforgiving, that torque isn't just nice to have, it's the difference between controlling a race and surviving one. Star Racing Yamaha understood this immediately. They built their own engine program on top of it. Upgraded pistons, modified cranks, custom ECU mapping, electric water pumps, and all of it locked behind a no secrets out policy that guarded Hoffman's dyno work like classified intelligence. The speed became undeniable. Mitch Payton is still one of the greatest engine tuners who has ever turned a wrench in this sport.
But I was always afraid that it would make the engine run hot and some of the other problems that came with it. But
the Pro Circuit KX250 is still fast, but it requires a margin of error that the Yamaha doesn't ask for. In a class that has almost no margin left, that's a fatal disadvantage. And once Star Racing built that mechanical edge, they layered something on top of it that changed the sport forever. Star Racing started as nothing. Bobby Regan founded the team in 1999 as a privateer operation, small, scrappy, running on determination and his wife's casino winnings.
They were racing each other and we were beating other people, you know. We don't want to take the competitive drive.
But somewhere in the mid-2010s, Regan had an epiphany about how to build champions at scale, and he blew up the entire model of how the 250 class was developed. He bought the Goat Farm in Cairo, Georgia, Ricky Carmichael's private training compound, 94 acres of tracks and facilities built specifically for Supercross and Motocross training. Star Racing moved their entire operation there, built a 12,000 square foot race shop on the property, moved the riders from California to Georgia, then told those riders something that sounded insane. You're gonna live here, train here, and your competitors are gonna be your teammates. The environment Regan built was almost military in its intensity. Riders train together every single day. They race each other on private tracks like it's a Saturday night main event on dense, red Georgia clay that mirrors the exact conditions they'll face at Nationals. The idea is brutal in its simplicity. Beat the best rider on your team in practice, and race night feels easier. When you line up against the rest of the field in front of 40,000 people, you've already beaten someone just as fast, probably faster. Pro Circuit operated differently. Riders got their Kawasaki, collected their paycheck, and managed their own training around Southern California. Mitch Payton provided the best equipment. The athlete controlled their destiny. It was individual excellence, supported by the best tools in the paddock. Star Racing removed that autonomy entirely. Everything systematized, everything controlled. If one rider got injured, another was already trained, prepared, and waiting. When Pro Circuit lost a rider to injury, they lost momentum. When Star Racing lost a rider, they just rotated to the next one on their roster. And this wasn't just better, it was fundamentally different. This was industrializing the process of making champions. Mitch Payton had to have seen this happening. The data was right there in the standings, year after year. He knew Star Racing was winning, and he knew how they were doing it. So why couldn't he change? Well, because the thing that made Pro Circuit great was the same thing that made it impossible to adapt. Payton built his team on loyalty. When riders got hurt, he kept paying them. When they came back, he welcomed them back. That loyalty was beautiful, but it was also devastating. While he was standing by his injured riders, Star Racing was cycling in fresh talent, keeping the pressure relentless, calculated, ruthlessly efficient. In modern motocross, the depth chart beats loyalty every time. If you want to understand the Pro Circuit curse, look at Adam Cianciarulo. He was supposed to be Ricky Carmichael 2.0. He came to Pro Circuit with 11 Loretta Lynn's amateur national titles. 11. The most hyped amateur in a generation. When he turned pro, the expectation wasn't that he'd win. The expectation was that he'd dominate. the way Carmichael had dominated, completely, systematically, without apology. His first professional Supercross was in 2014. He won his very first main event. It was the announcement the sport had been waiting for.
Another win for you tonight, 3 wins in 5 starts. Were you ever expecting this?
Then Toronto. His shoulder dislocated on the side of the track. They popped it back in, and he tried to race through it. He couldn't. He missed the entire 2015 season after surgery. A broken wrist in 2016 took the next year too. He was spending more time in recovery than on the bike. The intensity required to be the guy at Pro Circuit was extracting a physical toll that had nothing to do with speed. By 2019, Cianciarulo was finally healthy, finally dialed, finally in position. Las Vegas, 250SX West Final, 8 points ahead of Dylan Ferrandis going into the night. The championship was his to lose. Literally, he just had to finish ahead of one guy. He crashed in the rhythm section. Not a small crash. The motorcycle was basically unrideable. He coasted around the track watching the title disappear. Ferrandis took it. Mitch Payton later called it a very bad night, and that was putting it gently. But here's the part that defines Cianciarulo. He didn't fold. He took that Las Vegas heartbreak straight into the 2019 Pro Motocross Championship and won. First career 250 title. He carried the mantle, finally, the way everyone always said he would. It remains, to this day, the last championship Pro Circuit would win in the 250 class. If Cianciarulo represents the psychological toll of the Pro Circuit legacy, Austin Forkner represents something darker. Forkner rode like physics was a suggestion, absolutely reckless in the best possible way, a style that was spectacular to watch, and brutal on the body. His tragedy is specific. Forkner tried to beat the Star Racing Yamahas on Pro Circuit equipment by riding harder than the human body is designed to ride. He overrode the Kawasaki constantly, trying to match corner speed and torque output that the engine simply wasn't built to deliver. Sometimes it worked, but when it didn't just fail a little. It failed catastrophically.
I'm surprised at 33. Oh! Connects in air! As Jet Lawrence.
During the 2019 season, Forkner was running away with the 250 Supercross East title, 26 points ahead, the championship a formality. Then a practice crash in Nashville tore his ACL and meniscus. He tried to race through it at the next round, but the damage was already done. He withdrew furious, watching a title he already had disappear. He came back again. 2020, Salt Lake City, another title fight with Ferrandis. Forkner gets kicked forward over a dragon's back and lands hard. His spleen gets partially removed. His pancreas is damaged. He's in the hospital. He came back again. 2023, Anaheim 1. First turn collision. ACL, meniscus, tibia, and fibula. Season over before it started. And then 2024. Forkner wins the season opener in Detroit. He's got the red plate. He's leading Arlington, controlling the race. Then something happens that almost never happens to anyone. His contact lens falls out mid-race. In a 250 Supercross main event at absolute limit, losing depth perception isn't an inconvenience. He comes up short on a jump. He hits the concrete floor hard. Fractured spine, broken scapula, severe internal bleeding. He was unconscious on the stadium floor. That's what people call the curse. Not bad luck, not mystical, just the brutal arithmetic of a rider trying to win in a sport that's evolved past the margin of error his equipment allowed him. Forkner's speed was never in question. His problem was that the Kawasaki asked him to operate at a zero margin threshold, and when something went wrong at zero margin, it didn't go wrong just a little bit. Cianciarulo and Forkner weren't anomalies. The pattern ran through the entire team. Las Vegas, 2017. Joey Savaggi is seconds away from stealing the 250 SX East title. Zach Osborne on Rockstar Husqvarna comes charging through on the final lap and collides with him in the last turn. Savaggi hits the ground. Osborne takes the championship. Later, the AMA fines Osborne $7,500, but the title stands. Atlanta 2, 2021. Cameron McAdoo gets bucked over the bars on the tunnel jump and crashes so violently the race is red flagged. His bike is mangled. His body looks wrecked, but because fewer than 3 laps had been completed, the main event gets a full restart. McAdoo gets cleared, climbs back onto a motorcycle, and somehow finishes on the podium. It was the most pro circuit thing that's ever happened, and it was also a perfect picture of the problem. All the willpower, all the toughness, all the individual heart in the world, and Star Racing was still the team walking away with the championships. Because the sport stopped rewarding willpower, it started rewarding systems. Here's where the real difference starts to show. When Cianciarulo got hurt, Peyton kept paying him. When Forkner went down, the team stood behind him. That's how Pro Circuit operates. They invest in their guys and ride it out, even when it costs them. But Star Racing is built differently. When one rider goes down, they don't stop. They just reload. Another rider steps in, the program keeps moving, and they stay in the title fight. It's not that injuries don't hurt them, it's that they're built to absorb it. Pro Circuit has always leaned on a few elite riders to carry the weight. Star Racing built depth, a full pipeline of talent ready to step in at any moment. In today's 250 class, that depth isn't just an advantage. It's the difference between contending and controlling the championship. Mitch Payton is still one of the greatest engine tuners who has ever lived. The Pro Circuit Kawasaki still produces race winners, 300 of them, and counting. But the advantage that once existed, where superior engine tuning created a gap wide enough for elite riders to separate from the field and coast to championships, that advantage is gone. Star Racing erased it mechanically in 2014 and surpassed it with a torque curve that suits modern Supercross and Motocross better. Then they layered a training infrastructure on top that made the mechanical advantage almost secondary. The price of speed in the modern 250 class isn't measured in horsepower alone. It's measured in sustained speed, riding near absolute limit for the entirety of a 20-minute main event, where a rut collapsing, a line 6 inches wide, a contact lens falling out, can end a career in an instant. Pro Circuit built around the individual. One elite talent with the best engine carrying the flag until his body gave out. Star Racing built around continuity. The next rider trained, ready, and pointed at the gate. When a Pro Circuit rider hit the limit and got hurt, the championship conversation ended. When a Star Racing rider went down, it barely changed the standings. It's not a moral judgment, that's just what the sport became. Too deep and moving too fast for any individual brilliance to carry a team anymore. You had to build something that didn't depend on any single person. Star Racing built it, Pro Circuit didn't. That's why the era ended. So what do you think? Who gets Pro Circuit's next 250 title? And if you want to see how Star Racing built the system that replaced them, that video's right here. Thanks for watching, and stay wicked.